So this week I have The Great Wall. And personally, I have to evaluate this film on two factors. The first and foremost is as someone who sees a lot of movies. And the second is as a person of Chinese heritage. And unfortunately, this film disappointed me on both fronts. If you're looking at this just purely as a bad monster movie, which is what it is, it's bad. It's a bad monster movie, but not even like a cheesy, fun, campy one. It's just bad. The story is Matt Damon, who has a terrible Irish accent in this for some reason, and Pedro Pascal, who you may know from Game of Thrones or Narcos, go to China to steal gunpowder from the Chinese. And they get trapped at the Great Wall, which apparently in this universe wasn't built to defend against human invaders, but instead these weird jade lizard beast creatures.
Ooh.
No. you think in concept, when they're pitching it, like that could have been cool, but no, in execution, not at all. I'm not a huge fan of a cultural appropriation, but if you're going to set a movie like this in China, why not at least have some creatures out of Chinese mythology? I guess that must have been out of their budget or something like that, even though they spent so much money on this movie, clearly. The plot is paper or rice paper thin. There's a terrible romantic subplot with Matt Damon and Tianjing, who plays the daughter of the general in charge of the section of wall they're at. And by almost romantic subplot, I mean there's as much fizzle as like a pile of dirt. It's this like, it's not a will they, won't they, it's a they just won't. Like and then they set it up for a sequel, spoiler alert. And I'm just like, why? So they can just not talk to each other more? This is mean, but I couldn't have cared less if any of the characters lived or died, honestly. And then my secondary frustration are, this film was directed by Zhang Yimou, who did Hero and House of Flying Daggers, which are two of my favorite contemporary, they're called wuxia films, and it's all those like martial arts films, and they're amazing. And he's just like such a master of his craft, and he has such a distinct cinematic style. And there's maybe one scene in this film that even hints that the same person was directing those.
Wow.
It's this like crazy battle scene on the wall with all the monsters, and then these crazy sort of like flying and jumping techniques, which again, House of Flying Daggers, you're familiar with his work. It was also like, this is the most ineffective way to fight a monster I could think of. But it's beautiful for 5 whole minutes on screen, and then the rest of the movie is just a waste of your time. There was a lot of hullabaloo about this film whitewashing, and I don't know if it's actually fair to say whitewashing, because I guess Matt Damon's character didn't need to be Chinese for this story, and stories in quotes, to work. But at the same time, my disappointment with this is like, it was billed as this huge, it was the first like film of this scale to be filmed all in China, but it's a Hollywood film and all this stuff. And the problem is that it's bad. It's a bad movie on all fronts. And like the Chinese actors are fine, and that's great. And like, it's nice to hear Chinese on screen in a Hollywood film and not have it be, have it actually be like the protagonists in a sense. But I was just like, if you're going to hire Zhang Yimou to do a film, let him do a film. Don't keep making him compromise just because you expect this to be like some blockbuster success, because what you're going to end up with is a dud. And that's what this was. It was a poorly acted, like poorly paced, just squandered opportunity. So I'm only going to give it 1.7.
Ooh.
Great.
Woo.
That's the second lowest.
It was going to be the lowest. And then I saw 50 Shades Darker the week before, and it changed everything, because I saw this before.
Which was a no hawk,
which
by
is
the way.
The first no hawk. So this has more. I guess it was more interesting than 50 Shades Darker, in that I didn't necessarily want to walk out. But that's a low bar. And I think for me, it was mostly about the disappointment factor, in that it had potential and it was just completely wasted. I have a cure for wellness, and I am not a horror or thriller movie fan, in part because I just get really scared of everything really easily. So I watch these types of movies like with my hands over my eyes, which isn't really a good use of time or money. But so I was really reticent going into this one. And unfortunately, with good reason. It's from Gore Verbinski, who directed the Pirates of the Caribbean films and also the American version of The Ring. So he knows his horror movies. Also, fun fact, he directed the Nathan Lane classic Mouse Hunt. Just want to point that out. Same dude. So
versatile.
Very, very. My biggest issue with this film, that it was way too long. I think there's actually a good psychological thriller, horror-y story somewhere buried in there, but it's buried under many, many minutes of worthless screen time. It stars Dane DeHaan, who is like a lesser, more sickly Leonardo DiCaprio, or at least that's what he looks like. It's got Jason Isaacs, who you might know as Lucius Malfoy from the Harry Potter films, and Mia Goth, who, her fun fact is she's married to Shia LaBeouf. So it takes place in a Swiss sort of rehabby retreat spa place, very idyllic, and it's for corporate executives who are burnt out, and they come here to relax and disconnect. And it's all about hydrotherapy and water, and there's a bunch of stuff about water, and if you watch the trailers, it's going to make you want to go to the bathroom because it's just all water. But of course, there has to be something spooky and eerie and amiss in this place. And I'm not going to tell you the plot because, one, it was super convoluted, and I'm not sure I could tell you. I mean, I could, but it would take longer than we have. And it relies on surprise, and I don't want to spoil it for the few people who are probably going to see this independent of what I say. I will say it's well shot. The cinematography is very impressive. The music is good. It's creepy and fitting, and it's not ever something you're going to put on as like a jam session or background music. But I really know that was one of the things I really did notice about the film that complimented it well, and that's probably one of the only compliments I'm going to give it. It's one of those films where I almost want to give people credit for trying, because I don't think any of them were actually phoning it in, which makes me more concerned about where it went wrong, if it was a taste level thing, if it was just like, hey, it's Gore Verbinski, let him do whatever he wants, and they just didn't give, his editor wasn't willing to push back. There was just a disconnect between some of it. It definitely could have used an editing pass or 2 or 3. I'm going to warn you, if you don't like slithery things, if you don't like teeth stuff, if you don't like drowning, I think most people don't like drowning, but if you're like truly afraid of water and drowning, definitely do not go see this movie. And unfortunately, two of those things are things I'm terrified, not drowning, not scared of drowning, but like teeth stuff just drives me up the wall. And even talking about it right now, like I'm tensing up. So you have to sit through that, which is no thank you for me. So if you love horror films, you might enjoy this one. Just know it's not particularly original. For everyone else, I'm just going to go ahead and say skip it, because there wasn't anything. I literally can't think of something where I'm like, you know what, that one thing could have made it worth it.
Was it scary at all?
It ended up being less pop-out thrillery than I was expecting, but it's definitely creepy and gets under your skin a little bit. So in that sense, I guess it accomplished that, right? It made me feel uncomfortable. So it made an audience member feel something. So that's one checkpoint. But aside from that, it definitely failed on a lot of levels.
This doesn't sound like it's going to be a good count for Mohawks.
I'm going to give it 1.8.
Wow.
What?
Man, not a good month for movies.
Not a good month for movies.
When is something good coming?
Well, Lego Batman was great. There's a film called A United Kingdom that's the polar opposite of all these, that if anyone wants to see, it's about a true life story, and it's about an African prince who marries a British woman. Literally, I'm not kidding. And then he was banned from his own country because it was under British rule, and so they were separated. It's a completely different movie. It's out in theaters.
Yeah, it looks amazing too.
Yeah, it's sweet. It's sweet. It's definitely the opposite of all these. It's got good performances. I'm actually not sure why I just didn't review that instead at this point.
Well, you just did, kind of.
Well, there you go.
Shout
Go
out
see
to
that.
United Kingdom. It's actually pretty painful to watch right now, because it's all about like families being separated by
Yeah.
stupid laws. Gee, I wonder. So that's probably why I didn't review, because it was hard to watch.
Yeah.